Hey guys, welcome back to my colourful country life. It is that time of the month again, time for my September completed pages. It has been a pretty productive month. I have 10 pages to share with you today, so let's pop these books to the side and dive straight in. We'll start with Rooms of Wonder by Johanna Basford. This is one of the full book colour-alongs up on my channel, and I do have a dedicated playlist which is linked below if you'd like to catch up on all the pages we've coloured so far. In my September plans video, I mentioned I was going to hold a bit of a marathon month with this book. When I counted up at the start of the month, there were 31 pages left to colour, and I'm happy to say I finished 5 in September, which brings me down to 26 remaining, which actually still sounds like a lot, but honestly, when I flip through the book, it doesn't look nearly as intimidating as what it sounds. If you do want to see a quick flip of the uncoloured pages, that is also in my September plans video too. So let's begin with the title page. I absolutely loved working on this one. I wanted a magical feel, so instead of green leaves, I went with one of my favorite color palettes, pink, purple and teal, and it actually matches the introduction pages in this book, which I think is a really fun detail. These pages have those decorative borders with this sort of blank circle in the center, and since this one is a circular motif too, the colors really tie them together. So for the background, I used Neocolor 2 and created this drip effect. I must have pulled it off really well because my daughter walked past and gasped. She thought the color had actually run down the page by accident. So to add some sparkle, I also mixed in some Winsor & Newton gold ink, which I think actually catches the light quite beautifully. It's very pretty. Hopefully you can see that catching on the background. And for the main leaves and a lock and key, I used my Prismacolor pencils, and I used a gold gel pen for the smaller keys, the border and the stars. And then I added some white dots with my Toolyart acrylic paint pen for some extra detail. This was actually the first time I've used Neocolor 2 in one of Johanna's books, and I did get quite a lot of warping of the paper, more than I've had in any other book in my colouring book collection. I did iron the page afterwards, which did help flatten it, but it is still a bit crinkly. And I do have a full video on the channel on how to safely iron your colouring pages. If you are curious, I will link it up in the eye above. Then the next 2 pages I worked on were the publisher information and the nameplate pages. And since they sit side by side, I wanted them to feel cohesive. So I started with the nameplate page and then based the publisher page on what I created for the nameplate page. So both illustrations are actually fairly simple. So I decided to let the backgrounds do most of the work and become the focal point of the pages. For the nameplate page, I used Distress inks to build up a soft flowing background. I love how smoothly the colours blended together. It gives off a bit of a galaxy vibe without actually being a galaxy background. So to keep everything neat, I taped off the edges, which creates a crisp border. This is such a simple trick, but it really helps frame the page and draw the eye into the centre. And after blending the Distress inks, I sprayed over the top with Kaisercraft Gold Shimmer Spray for some sparkle, then flicked on white acrylic paint to add splatter. And to finish off the background, I used my Toolyart paint pen to cover the little printed black dots that were part of the design. So all of my favourite things all together on one page. We've got sparkle, shimmer, splatter and spots, the 4 S's. And for the actual illustration, I used Prismacolor pencils, and the colour combination is one of the combinations from my Metal Colour Combos worksheet for Prismacolors. Also, if you are curious about any of the products I mention that I use in my books, I do always link what I can in my Amazon storefronts, which are listed in the video description in case there is anything that you're ever looking for. And lastly, I filled in the nameplate itself with my black Jelly Roll glaze pen. Once that was done, I moved straight into the publisher page so I could create a matching look. And instead of repeating the exact colors, I kept the same soft movement to the background, but I used purple instead. Now, purple and blue sit right next to each other in the color wheel, so the color harmony is still there and both pages do tie together while still giving each one its own identity. I did consider adding some blue into the butterfly pattern at the end of the keys, but in the end I decided against it just to keep that unified look between both the pages. I also taped off this page, but I had run out of my usual washi tape and used a different one. Unfortunately, it did not stick properly and I ended up with some ink bleeding under the tape at the bottom here. I did try to lift or diffuse it with water, which sort of did work, but it also tore the paper slightly. So to cover it up, I added a gold gel pen border, which actually turned into a nice feature. Now, I have to tell you, I was a little hesitant to use distress inks on this page because the paper had already wrinkled from that Neo Color 2 on the title page, and you can still see those circular ridges through the distress ink. At first I wished I'd worked on this page before colouring the title page so I could get that perfectly smooth background that I'm usually aiming for, but the more I looked at it, the more I liked it. It adds movement and texture, almost like it's part of the design, a bit like a spiral galaxy. It gives that sort of swirling motion, and because the wrinkle pattern is circular, it actually draws your eye back to the center image. So in hindsight, it actually works well, I guess. So just like the nameplate page, I did finish with the gold shimmer spray, white acrylic splatter, and then Prismacolor pencils for the elements. Let me lift it up and show you how sparkly these pages are. Let's see if we can catch some light. Don't know if that is showing because the light is shining on my camera, so I can't see what is showing on the screen, but hopefully that is showing some of that sparkle. Okay, so our fourth page was this one, this mechanical steampunk inspired creature page. Now, to be perfectly honest, steampunk and lots of metal elements are not usually my favorite things to color, but this page kept calling to me in September, so I thought I'd better jump on it while I was actually in the mood. And I wanted to give the illustration some more grounding, so I added my own backgrounds instead of leaving the creatures sort of floating in the middle of the page. And I decided to split the scene into land and sea, which instantly gave the page more context. So behind the snail and butterfly, I created a bokeh effect. It's not the strongest bokeh I've ever done. The pencils actually felt a bit odd while I was layering them, which is really unusual for this book, but I do still like the end result. It's quite subtle and I really enjoy how the effect fades out as it moves higher up the page. For the snail and the butterfly themselves, I used warm browns with green and gold, so they felt cohesive, not only with each other, but also with the background too. And then for contrast, I gave the ocean section a cool palette. So pairing warm and cool tones together on a page naturally creates balance, and in this case helps the two halves of the page feel distinct, but without clashing. So to create the ocean effect, I did use a wave stencil, which I think added a sense of movement and texture to the background. And I coloured the entire page with Prismacolor pencils, then went back in with gel pens to add a touch of sparkle. I used my Jelly Roll pens, Sparkle Pop pens, and even some Wink of Stella on the light rays from the fish. I still can't decide if this is supposed to be a mechanical anglerfish or a fish-shaped submarine with a telescope attached. Maybe it's both. We may never know. And finally, I added highlights and little spots, of course, with my Tooly Art white paint pen. So this page ended up with 3 S's this time: shimmer, sparkle, and spots. And it's very subtle, so I'll just lift it up and you might be able to see the Wink of Stella on the light rays and a bit of sparkle on the fish. Okay, so on to the last page, which is literally the last page. So for the background, I used my Distress inks. This time I chose shades that would give the page more of a vintaged, aged paper effect. I blended the inks right out to the very edges of the paper, which helps create that worn antique look. If you've seen the colour along for this page, you might have seen there were some marks on the paper that weren't visible until I started adding the ink, like little fingerprint smudges. So this meant the Distress ink didn't go on as smoothly as it usually does for me. It gave the background a slightly texturized look, which did fit the antique feel. And I could have put some like little cracks or something in with a brown gel pen or something just to add to the effect. But I decided to try to disguise that slightly. So I did spray over the top with Craft Gold shimmer spray, of course, and that worked beautifully. The shimmer helped blur the background and also added a subtle shimmery glow over those vintage tones. And we all know how much I love my shimmer sprays. For the main element, the key, I used Prismacolor pencils and coloured it in silver. So this gave a contrast between the warm tones of the background and made the key stand out as the focal point. The combination I used is actually one from my Metal Combinations worksheet, if you'd like to try that one for yourself as well. And I wanted to add a small pop of colour to lift the page. Honestly, any accent colour would have worked with this neutral palette, but my daughter suggested red, so of course I went with that. And to finish, I added some white dots with my Tooly Art paint pen, which gave the page that extra little detail that I love to add. And that is it. That is all the pages I coloured in Rooms of Wonder for September. And let me just lift it up so you can see that shimmer sparkle. Look at that. So I am planning to keep the momentum going in October and hopefully get several more finished in that month, bringing me one step closer to completing the entire book. Our other full book colour along is from Dark Fairytales by Kerby Rosanes, and I coloured one page from it this month, which was the La Llorona double page spread. Now, if you saw my flip through and review of this book, you'll know that this was actually one of my least favourite illustrations. I fully expected it to be one of the last ones that I tackled, but in September it just kept calling to me, and I had a colour palette in my head, which I didn't end up going with, but I did decide to dive straight in. Originally, I planned to create some murky green water effects and also use a dark black green blend for her hair to mimic reeds wrapping around the children. But once I started layering, I really liked how the blue tones were sitting on the page. So I completely changed direction, and instead of green, I committed to blue as the main theme for the page. And honestly, I think I used every possible tone and version of blue in my Prismacolor collection. I coloured the children as if they'd been turned to stone. And I know this is not Medusa, but I didn't want to bring in skin tones or distracting colours into the water portion. So by turning them into statues, I kept the palette unified and kept the focus on her. I also kept the candles within the blue family as well to maintain harmony across the page. Her face and the flowers turned out just as I had imagined it from the very beginning, and then I added in a cloudy sky in Prismacolor pencils, which seems like such a small detail, but it really finished off the page. Sometimes it's those subtle touches that just add the most atmosphere to a page. For materials, I based some sections with Inktense and then used Prismacolor pencils for the rest of the page. I used my gold sparkle pop pen to add some sparkle details to her mask, loads of Tooly Art paint pens for highlights and details, and of course plenty of little white dots in the water. Now what I really love is that this page could easily have been dark and moody and spooky, but instead I focused on finding beauty in the details and letting the palette lift the mood of the page. So using a single colour family, in this case blues, or mostly blues, created a monochromatic palette on the right side of the page. This is such a powerful technique. It automatically pulls everything together harmoniously, and depending on how you vary light and dark shades, you can create depth without introducing too many new colors. Then as we moved across to the above water section, we created this bright, colorful contrast. So I think that really adds to the atmosphere and the movement of the page. And that's Dark Fairytales for September. And of course, all the pages from this book are color alongs up on the channel, and there is a dedicated playlist just for this book. While we're talking Kerby, let's move over to Mythomorphia, which is one of the project books I'm working on for the channel. And this month I coloured the Green Man, or in this case, we turned him into the Autumn Man. This page was actually such fun to colour. A few people did ask me if I got sick of leaves after doing it, but honestly, I didn't at all. I think working with those autumnal shades, the reds, oranges, browns and yellows, really did break up any repetition on the page. And I love how it looks like his face is just peeking through the bushes. So for his skin, I went with a more natural kind of skin tone, but I used the darkest colour from the skin combination to branch out, pun intended, to branch out into the branches, and it helped everything just melt together. So his features didn't look cut off from the foliage, but more like a part of the foliage instead. So the entire page was coloured with Prismacolor pencils. I added some small highlights with my Tooly Art paint pen, glossy accents on his eyes, and also the little ladybug up here for some shine, and Kindy Glitz glitter glue on the wings of the butterflies and dragonflies. Kindy Glitz, by the way, is an Australian brand similar to Stickles, but it gives a chunky bright sparkle that I just love, which is perfect on wings. And I have to just show you how super sparkly that is up close. I really hope the light is catching. It is so super sparkly and fun, and just adds that extra little touch to the page. And if you are colouring along with me in this book, this page is actually extra fun because you can actually get 3 pages out of it. So the publisher info double page spread, this one here, uses the same border illustration. So that border here is this part here around the outside of his face, and this is actually the same way here, but it is flipped upside down on this page. So that's the top there and that's the top there, so you can continue those colors through to these pages as well, and then you have 3 matching pages completed. So from a color theory perspective, autumn palettes are a great example of analogous colors, which just means colors that sit next to each other on the color wheel, like your red, your orange, your yellows. They naturally harmonize, which makes a page feel unified, pretty much similar to what I mentioned earlier with the blue and purple tones. So that is Mythomorphia for September. You will find the color along for this Autumn Man in my dedicated playlist for this book, if you'd like to follow along with me. Next up we have Romantic Country, the second tale by Eriy, which is another of the project books I'm working on for the channel, and there's also a dedicated playlist for all the color alongs in this book as well. So for September I coloured the Morris C page, and I absolutely love the final result, but I will be honest, there was a point where I nearly gave up on it completely. It was almost a forever whip. In my plans video, I had shared how I wanted to approach this page, including possible colour palettes and mediums, and one thing I mentioned was trying Neocolor 2 for the background. I have never used my Neocolor 2s in one of my Eriy books before, and some people did warn me that they didn't get good results when using them on this paper. So, being sensible for once, I did swatch them in the index pages first, which I don't normally do. And with a quick test, actually looked fine, and I'll show you. Yeah, that's my little quick test here. It looked fine. It didn't blend out that well, but it was just a quick test. I was being really rough, so I did decide to go for it on the main page. which was an absolute disaster. The pigments did not melt evenly across the page. It was leaving me with patchy splotches. The colors were really dull, they weren't very vibrant, and I did get a little bit of bleed through as well, which you might be able to see here. But you know me, I fully committed. I did 2 whole layers of Neocolor 2. Just kept going thinking it would get better with time. It didn't. It looked terrible. And I did leave this part in the color along so you can see exactly where it all went wrong before I did manage to rescue the page. So it was at this point that I stopped and decided to work on the other elements, like the sand, for example, because I thought maybe if I color the other elements, it might just bring the page all together and it would look okay at the end. But my brain kept fixating on the water. I could not move forward until I had made an attempt to fix it. So I decided to use that patchy Neocolor 2 as a base and layered Prismacolor pencils over the top. I mean, it couldn't get any worse, and if it did by any chance, I just thought maybe I could cover it with some acrylic paint perhaps, I don't know. But colouring with the Prismacolors over the top completely transformed the background. The pencils went down smoothly, and because the Neocolor 2 had already covered the paper, I didn't use up nearly as much pencil as I would have if I had gone and done just a pencil background. So in the end, what actually started as a fail turned into one of my favourite parts on this page. And once the water was finally sorted, I made the rest of the illustration really bright, vibrant and colourful. I do love colouring underwater scenes and pairing those underwater vibes with a vibrant, punchy colour palette. That just makes these pages so much fun for me. And honestly, I'm still shocked at how well it turned out after such a rough start. I absolutely love the final result of this page. And surprisingly, there's no sparkle on this one either, just Tooly Art paint pens, and a myriad of different colors just to cover some of the black lines, and a black Jelly Roll glaze pen to add some final touches as well. So from a learning perspective, this page is a great example of how water soluble mediums and pencils can work nicely together. If your water mediums don't look how you want it to, it can still in some cases provide colour and depth underneath your pencils while also saving the life of your pencils, but be mindful of that bleed through as well. So that is Romantic Country, the second tale by Eriy for the month of September. Next is the Protea page from The Language of Flowers by Stratten Peterson. This one was a whip I had sitting around for many months, so I was really happy to finally complete it. I worked with a fairly limited palette on this page, and I coloured all the elements with Prismacolor pencils. On the bugs, I added a little bit of sparkle with my gold sparkle pop pen, which gave them a lovely shiny accent. So for the background, I masked off the border with washi tape and then used an Artex acrylic paint pen to fill it in. I added 2 layers of the paint pen to get a smooth, even coverage. And I love how the light blue makes the Protea flowers pop on the page as well. So once the background was dry, I sprayed some gold shimmer spray across the background and then added some white dots for a touch of extra interest and texture. You guys know how much I love those shimmer sprays. So although the design itself is actually quite simple, using only coloured pencils and building up layers as well made it much more time consuming than I thought it was going to be. It was a good reminder that even easy looking pages can take a lot longer if you don't base them first. So next time I will definitely be layering with a base layer, either with markers, water soluble mediums, or even soft pastels to save time and pencils. And this book is technically one-sided, so you could use alcohol markers. You would just be sacrificing the flower information on the back of the page. So finally, that is my completed page in The Language of Flowers by Stratten Peterson. And finally, my last completed page for September is from Ohuhu's Mandala and Animals colouring book. You might have seen me working on this one during my review for the new soft chisel tip markers from Ohuhu. This was a fun, fairly quick page, and I chose this design specifically because it had lots of curves, and that way I could really see how well the new tips maneuvered around rounded shapes and details. I did colour all the main elements with that soft chisel tip just to give them a proper test. And for the background, I used soft pastels for the water and sand, then added sparkle to the fish with my Ohuhu glitter gel pens. I popped in some bubbles using my Tooly Art white paint pen and gave the sand a little bit of extra detail with a gold gel pen. And you can see the sparkle on the fish there, and hopefully that little gold detailing in the sand as well. Now for the rocks, I coloured them first with a single grey marker, and then I decided to test how the Ohuhu Halavar pencils blended over the top of the markers, which is something I didn't do when I was testing the Halavar pencils out originally. But the pencils laid beautifully over the marker base. And one thing I really do have to mention is the paper in these Ohuhu books. It is double-sided, as you can see here, but it is also bleed proof, so you don't need to put anything underneath to protect your pages when colouring with markers. So that is a page from Ohuhu's Mandala and Animals book for September. Okay, now I also have some whips to show you. We have created 4 works of progress in Summer Nights by Hanna Karlzon, and I do plan to add quite a few more whips to my belt before my new series is over. Last year I ended the year with no whips at all. This year I plan to end it with lots, which just shows that this series is doing exactly what it's meant to, and we are creating lots of wonderful, simple, easy backgrounds. Whips are not our enemies. They are the promise of future creativity. Every unfinished page is simply waiting for that right spark of inspiration to hit, and I know I will complete them all eventually. In fact, some of the whips I did start this month, I'm already itching to finish in October, so don't be surprised if you see them pop up in my October plans video. So as you may have seen on the channel and in the polls on my Instagram stories, I have started a brand new background series. In it, I will be creating simple backgrounds with different mediums. The first one was soft pastels, and you guys asked me to focus on 4 main effects, which was clouds, a galaxy sky, a bokeh effect, and smooth blends. So let's take a look at the first background in the book, and that was this dreamy cloud background with soft pastels only. So I go into more detail about the color choices and techniques in the tutorial, so I won't cover all of that here, but I will say I am really excited to bring those soft blues and those pinky purple tones into the rest of the page. I can already see this finished piece in my head, and of course I'll be adding some shimmer spray at the very end, probably my sparkle shimmer spray. And what can I say? This is me after all. I like to add some sparkle to my pages. And next up is our galaxy background. Now, dark backgrounds can get very messy, but the final effect is always worth it. And while I had this double page masked up with my masking fluid, I added some gold shimmer spray and also some white paint splatter for the stars to finish off that galaxy effect. And now I cannot wait to contrast those deep dark tones with some brighter birds just to make them pop off the page. So our next background was a bokeh effect. This one is so quick and simple, but really effective. And once I complete the entire page, I will add some shimmer to that background and also some white dots just to enhance that dreamy look. I also planned the background colors for this page so they'll work seamlessly with the other elements. So I can already picture what colors I want the butterfly and the flowers to be, although I'm not quite sure if I want to invert them. So I don't know if I want to have the flowers matching the background and contrast the butterfly, or match the butterfly to the background and contrast the flowers. So that I will decide when I finally come to finish the page. And in the video, I do discuss other ways to add different colors to your bokeh backgrounds to create an even more realistic finish than what I have done here. I stopped at this point because I wanted it to match the other elements, but there's so much more you can do to add to your bokeh effects with your soft pastels. And lastly, we did a background using a smooth blend. Honestly, I find smooth backgrounds so satisfying, no matter the medium, whether it's pastels, distress ink, Inktense, coloured pencils, a clean, seamless blend just makes me happy every time. I thought about adding a bit of shimmer here too, but I decided to keep it simple and instead finish it off with a shiny gold gel pen border instead. So that is everything I have to share with you guys for September. Over on Instagram, you have already given me ideas for other mediums to feature in the background series, but I'd also love to hear from you here too. What medium would you like me to use next, and what background techniques should I cover in the next tutorial? If you have made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave me a sparkly star emoji in the comments to go with all of our shimmering pages for this month, and let me know what was your favorite page from September. For me, it has to be the La Llorona page, I think, from Dark Fairytales. It completely surprised me by becoming my favorite of the month. Now, looking ahead, we will be back in October with more color combinations. I believe yellow chroma flows are up next, plus of course more tutorials and more color alongs. So thank you as always for watching and supporting the channel. If you enjoy this video, please consider giving it a like or a hype, and if you're not already subscribed, make sure you do so you don't miss out on what is coming up next. So take care, happy coloring, and bye for now.